good morning, and welcome to the Skinny for Friday. Let me get that music down a little bit so you can hear me here. Okay. Oh, okay. That was very harsh there. Good morning and welcome to the Skinny for Friday, September 19th. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Forward of Phoenix, joined by Ray Roa, the editor-in-chief with Creative Loafing newspaper. Ray, I know that you're working on the big Best of the Bay issue coming out in a week and a half.
It's happening, man. We're going to drop the issue a day earlier than we normally do. We're normally on stands Thursdays, but this one will come out Wednesday night. We have a big party on Wednesday and hope to, see some of the listeners out there and people from the station. But yeah, man, this is it. I'm losing my mind.
I know. I used to be the political editor at CL back in the day, 10 years ago. And yes, it's very intensive work to put that issue together.
Yeah, but it's really special. I think it's the coolest thing that the paper does, and it's cool to get back in touch with the community and see everybody. So,
well, yeah, I want to tell. So again, I thank our listeners for tuning in this morning here. We're going to, later on the show, we're going to open up the phones. We usually don't do that too much when we have our guests here, and we do have a guest here, but there's so much going on in the country right now that I really think it'd be great if our listeners wanted to tap in on some of the stuff that's going on, give you the opportunity to a little later. But first, we do have here in studio Richie Floyd, who was the St. Petersburg City Council member from District 8. He has been on the council since 2021, a former systems and hardware engineer and an educator, and now with us here on the Skinny. Good morning, Richie.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. We have had you on the Skinny one time via Zoom, but I was really hoping you could make it because we've had a couple of your colleagues on this year. We had Lisette Hanowitz, and we've also had Brandy Gabbard both on. So we trying to give out love to the St. Pete community here, which is where I live actually these days. So I'm very interested in what's going on there. But your vision of things transcends, I believe, even what you're doing in St. Pete City Council. But let's talk. There's a lot going on in the city, and I think the first thing I want to bring up is something that hasn't really been in the news a lot lately, but it's a big issue, and that is about our utility bills, right? What we call it's going up like everything else is, and you guys, and you have been a leader in this movement. The council voted 5-3 last month in favor of asking Mayor Ken Welch to seek proposals for a feasibility study on whether the city could operate its own municipal electric utility, and if it would be cheaper and more sustainable than under the current contract with Duke Energy, which is going to run out soon. Why do you want to do this?
Yeah, so our agreement with Duke Energy was a 30-year agreement signed 30 years ago in August of next year. So August 1st of next year, we're going to either enter a new agreement with them or come up with some alternative. And so since, it's basically a once-in-a-generation opportunity to look at the city's options, I've just been saying we need to investigate, do a feasibility study on whether or not public ownership of our electric grid is an option for St. Petersburg. And it's not a radical idea or anything, although I think it's an important one. It's a thing that happens in a lot of different places. Orlando,
Lakeland,
Tallahassee, Lakeland, Winter Park, Gainesville. These are all places that control their own electrical grid. And on average, they have 20% lower bills than we do in St. Pete. And they make community-based decisions about what happens with their electrical grid instead of decisions based on the interests of shareholders and their profits. So it's an idea that I think is worth exploring. And I'm really excited that we were able to get resolution passed in City Council supporting the idea of a feasibility study. I'm looking forward to us actually getting one issued.
Right. Now, we know, of course, Clearwater, right nearby, of course, is doing exactly what you guys have just voted to do. And I reached out to Clearwater a few weeks, maybe about a month or so ago now, and because we thought their study was going to be done by August of this year, actually. It's still not available yet, but they are looking at the exact same thing. And I'm sure you followed this. So while they have their own, I think they paid $500,000 for a consultant to look at the pros and cons of this. The Duke Energy themselves went ahead and did a study, or used a firm that did a study that said this was going to be over $1 billion, and it really freaked people out. And as the Tampa Bay Times' Emily Mahoney reported, Duke has been known, or other utility companies who are fearful of losing their contracts have used the same consultant to do that. It was a Concentric Energy Advisors, actually, who was the name of that company here. I'm hoping you guys don't get that company here in the case of...
I won't approve that.
Yeah, indeed. So another thing here that I covered an event a couple weeks ago in St. Petersburg, and that is something that's gotten very little attention here, both in Tampa and St. Petersburg, and that is that the St. Pete Police Department signed a 287G agreement with ICE earlier this year. And that, of course, is to assist with, bringing in undocumented immigrants, as it were. This has been controversial in some other cities because the important point for people to know about, and I certainly try to do this in my reporting to let people know about it, is that while the Florida legislature passed a law this year that required counties to sign an agreement with ICE, they did not do that with cities. And yet many cities, not every city has done this, so it's not like you have to do it. But many cities have done this, including Tampa, including St. Petersburg, without very little debate or discussion. Were you aware when this took place with the St. Pete Police Department?
Yeah, so I wasn't told anything about the agreement until after we had signed it. And, I can't speak to what their thoughts were when they signed it, but you're right, other cities haven't done it and have actually gone to court against doing it when they've been pressured to. And cities that have done it, though, have tried to repeal it, like Key West, and came under a lot of intense scrutiny from the state, and were, threatened with all sorts of different things. And right now, I'm waiting to see what happens with court cases. I'm hearing positive things about us not actually having to do this. And if that's the case and it's determined in court, I don't think we should have anything to do with ICE. They're a rogue agency gone wild and spewing fascism all over our country. So I'm not interested.
Well, I reached out. I did the story a couple weeks ago to Police Chief Anthony Holloway, and he sent me a statement. I wanted to read that for us and the listeners here. He wrote, quote, "To clarify, our department is not part of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We assist ICE only when, during the course of a lawful encounter, an individual is identified as a suspect or subject in a criminal investigation. If it is determined that the individual has an active warrant, we are legally obligated to execute that warrant, whether it's ICE-related or not, fairly and consistently. We are not seeking, nor do we receive funding to support ICE operations." So do with that what you will.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's just speaking to the logistics of how everything takes place. But, any sort of collaboration with an organization that's obviously targeting people regardless of their residency status should be tamped down, in my opinion.
Again, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Skinny here. Mitch Perry, Ray Rowe. We're talking to St. Petersburg City Council member Richie Floyd. Richie's been on the board since 2021. Usually you'd be up for re-election in a couple months, or you even had a primary, I guess, last month, and that didn't happen because the city voted. The people voted on this. You've moved the election from what usually would be this year an off year to now an even year with the governor's race on the ballot next fall, and also was a U.S. Senate race as well. That's, do you support that idea? I mean, you're getting an extra year on there, so it's kind of cool for you. But I mean, did you like the idea of doing that or not?
I mean, there's a double-edged sword, and I had some hesitancy at first, but ultimately, we were going to let the residents of the city decide, and so I was happy to let the residents of the city decide. But, St. Pete had really good engagement in our local politics, something like 30 to 40% turnout on off-year elections, which is incredible across the state and really across the country. And so people were seeking to encourage and enhance that engagement by moving it to an even year, also saving the city a lot of money as well. And I think part of the conversation is that the supervisor of elections was really putting a lot of pressure financially on us to do this. And that sort of is what got the wheels in motion for it. But, we're going to have higher turnout because of it. And we saw that last year's even year election. The issue is that it's very difficult to break through the noise of a presidential or gubernatorial or senatorial race at the same time if you're running for city council and you're number 27 on the ballot with 40 things on the ballot. And we saw that. I helped some people run for office last year, and it was difficult to get people's attention. And so, it is what it is now. It passed ultimately. Voters decided, and, obviously I respect their decision. And so we'll just be dealing with what it looks like to run in that kind of environment from now on. Yeah,
and what about you? You talk about the engagement, heavily engaged citizenry there and constituents. Your race was one of the last to be called. Yeah. I think it was 18, right? Mm-hmm. You got 51% of the vote. It was really close.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about running another campaign here? I know you get this extra year to think about it, but how are you? Where's your mind there?
Yeah, I mean, my first race was really difficult. I was a political outsider, no political experience, running against a former elected official that had name recognition.
Jeff Danner, yeah.
Yep. And citywide, you have the primary just in district in St. Pete. We have this.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, isn't it?
Kooky, yeah, that's what I would describe it as. Yeah.
So, like for example, we just had this special election in Tampa, right, which is only in District 5, and now the general election, which is going to be in late October, is also in District 5. Whereas in St. Pete, everybody would get to vote in the general, and that's what they get to do in St. Petersburg.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult because there's only 10 weeks between the primary and the general election. So we spent, 11 months talking to people just in our district, and we won our district by 27 percentage points in the primary, a majority in a 4-way race. Then you go citywide, you have 10 weeks to build relationships with basically 10 times the amount of people that live outside of the district. And, name recognition of a former elected official played a big role in that my opponent had that. But ultimately, running a very left-wing progressive campaign and being out front with our values and going door to door helped us overcome all of those things. And so I'm feeling, like I have a record to stand on that I'm really proud of. I've been able to do things. I've been able to accomplish a lot of things that I think people would have been doubtful at the beginning of my term. And so I'm feeling pretty good about running for re-election next year. I'll announce it at some point. And what I think is that we're still going to run the same campaign we ran last time, even bigger if we can, which included knocking on 30,000 doors, raising $120,000 with an average donation of like $27. And we're going to do all of those same things again. We're not going to take anything for granted. We really want to show people that we're here to work for them and the city as a whole.
And by the way, if you're just tuning in, the voice you're hearing belongs to Richie Floyd. He's the St. Petersburg City Councilman for District 8. We're talking all things St. Pete here, Mitch. We've bounced around to ICE and Duke Energy and this primary election. Let me ask you something real quick, Richie. You did knock on a lot of doors. You got a really good temperature on the political situation in your community. But in so many ways, 2018 feels like 5 lifetimes ago.
You're saying 18. He was 21.
Sorry, 21. Sorry. 21. And, but how much are you still knocking on doors and how much do you feel like the political energy has changed just like in this really short time that you've been in office?
Oh, I mean, it's changed multiple times over since I got there. We had a presidential election that saw the Democrats out of power. And then we've had a gubernatorial election that changed the makeup of the state. And then we've had Trump come back into office and upset a lot of people, which changed the energy again. And so things have, like in any politics, ebbed and flowed over the years. But we still knock a lot of doors. Obviously, you don't get as much volunteer support and attention when you're not campaigning. But, we talked about Duke Energy. The Duke Energy campaign, the Dump Duke campaign, as we're calling it in St. Pete, is knocking on doors constantly. They took the summer off because of the heat, but they're back at it in the next couple of weeks. And we're knocking on Republican, Democrat, independent doors, and we're getting information about how they feel about their utilities. We're talking to them about a variety of political issues, and we've already done I think thousands of doors already for this campaign as well to get people to sign on. So I try my best to keep my ear to the street.
Why do you think you've been able to transcend your DSA connection? Can you talk about a progressive?
I want to get. Can we?
Can we hold that?
I want to talk to Zoran Mondami, which is the biggest story. So let's get a DSA in it. But yeah, great point. But I want to talk about, you mentioned Trump. So also let's talk about DeSantis and about DOJ, okay? Because this is really affecting the city right now, like it is many cities and counties. We learned this week that the city has renamed 2 city departments that include the words, quote, diversity and, quote, equity in their titles. The Office of Equity, created to make a level playing field in and around City Hall, is now the Office of Community Impact. The Office of Supplier Diversity, whose objective is to help minority-owned businesses compete for a city contract, is now the Office of Supplier Development. I guess first question to you is, are you concerned that these agencies will even be able to continue to exist moving forward?
Yeah, I don't know what pressure the state's going to put on us, but I spoke with the administration about this exact topic, them changing the name, trying to continue with the mission of the organization. I told them I understand where they're coming from, but, my personal opinion is I don't care what conservatives are throwing at us. I don't care. They like to label a lot of things. It'll be CRT, DEI. Now it's equity and inclusion. Like, they just demonize whatever word we put up there. I don't care. I'm a democratic socialist. You can call me whatever name you want. That's who I am, and I'm always going to call myself that. I support diversity and equity, and you can say whatever you want about diversity and equity, but those words have meanings, and they're important to me, and I'm not going to stop using them. Having said that, I understand why the administration did it, and so I'm not going to cause a scene or anything.
So we're going to see here, because Doge came to St. Pete, right? And I know they're going to come up with a report the next month or so, I guess. Blaise Ngolia, CFO, he was there. In fact, I was there when he came to St. Pete. There were some protesters out in front. That was very fun. It was 110-degree day there. But what it was interesting, and I know you saw this, Richie, I'm sure, was that the Doge auditor sent a 9-page letter to St. Pete officials on August 1st, which made numerous references to DEI policies adopted in the city in recent years. And auditors also said they wanted information about policies regarding resiliency and battling climate change, as well as specific purchases or leases of electric vehicles. Now, it seems pretty obvious what's going to happen with that. When they do release the report, they're going to, there's a city that's been, there's definitely money that are going to those different efforts. Cities, in terms of climate, right, has been on that for a decade or so, at least. But I'm sure that's, again, this Blaise Ngolia and Governor DeSantis, in part, are laying down the predicate for a soon-to-be, months from now, constitutional amendment on property taxes. And of course, what they're doing now is going to these local governments and trying to find where there's waste, right? Or what they define as waste, abuse, what have you. They said this week in Orange County had spent nearly $200 million in wasted efforts. And again, didn't really say what those plans were that they thought were waste. So I'm sure that when we do get this report from Florida Doge, it's going to list all what the city has been doing on these efforts. And again, it's like language and about how the news cycle spins about defining this as waste. I'm sure, what are your thoughts about that when this Doge report comes out, when you've seen what they're clearly looking for right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's the obvious things in there, equity, blah, 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 but then you get to climate change. Are you kidding me? Our city's 40% in the coastal high hazard area. Sea level rise is real. I would, obviously we can do better with a lot of the things that we do in St. Pete, but we're coming into problems of physics and water levels rising and storms getting stronger because of climate change. They're going to condemn us to a horrible fate if we can't work on these issues. And, on top of that, there was other things in there that are just absolutely not controversial. They were investigating us in how we do traffic calming and speed bumps. This is something I work on in a bipartisan fashion to try to make our neighborhoods safer, and they're condemning it as wasteful spending. So it's just a joke right now. And you mentioned it. It's literally just a propaganda tool at this point, them trying to stir the pot to try to polarize people against property taxes. And really what it is that property taxes are a progressive wealth tax that charge people more in taxes if they own more property. And it makes the rich pay more. And they don't like that. They're against it. They think the rich shouldn't have to pay any taxes. It should all be regressive on working people's backs. And so that's what they're doing. But right now, I feel pretty confident. They need 60% of people to vote to abolish property taxes. I think 41% of Floridians at a minimum, I think a majority, but at a minimum of 41% have the sense to not destroy their local governments by abolishing property taxes.
Well, again, I hate to use that cliche, but it's the devil's in the details, because we have no idea what it is actually going to look like, that amendment. Although I will say that one of the people who was on the Select House Committee in the legislature said the other day, we are not going to completely eliminate it. So at least we know that. There will be some form of property taxes.
Yeah, maybe this is a question for both of you, but it's something that Allison Hewitt talked about on Down and Dirty before us. But this idea of home rule, the session is going to start earlier. It's really hard to forecast what's going to happen in Tallahassee, but I'm sure it's been frustrating for you to get a lot of this state preemption. What is the temperature on that right now? And I know you guys can't talk amongst yourself when you're not in the chambers, but how is the city feeling about that, and whether or not it's going to get worse, or you have ways to kind of combat that here?
It's very frustrating, and it's gotten so much worse since I first got into office. They've passed like a few bills that they were calling like mega preemption over the last few legislative sessions, and so it's made it very difficult, not just for me to try to do like progressive causes, but for us to do things that we all agree on. We've already mentioned like climate resilience and street safety. Like these are things that should be pretty universal, and they're making it difficult for us to do those things as well. And so the concept of home rule is enshrined in the Constitution, but it's like kind of aspirational, the state constitution. And it basically says like the state, you have all the powers of the state until the state takes them away, and the state's taking them away as fast as they can because they just, and they're doing it to conservative local governments as well. Yeah. And I think they just don't want to see anybody who does anything that could possibly stand in their way. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, pivoting to Pinellas County Commission, Dave Eggers kind of, be frustrated with this recent DOJ effort and Creative Pinellas. Not to get too far away from the subject and cut me off, Mitch, if you want to stay kind of close to here. But, you come in with this from this left place, but when you get on city council, you really are nonpartisan and you represent such a broad base of people, and you end up having a lot of people that you never would have talked to before coming up to you. How much has your time in office not moved you to the center, but made you like more empathetic towards, sentiments and worries and concerns that maybe come more from the center and from the right? How much has it changed you in that way?
I mean, I wouldn't use the word that it changed me at all. But what I would say is that you get into office and you have a program that you want to enact, and you learn a lot about how you can enact things and where you can make a difference. And so there's some basic tenets of being like a progressive or a left-wing or a democratic socialist that you always hold on to, but there's other things about just being a good legislator that you latch onto as well. And so they can never preempt things like good governance. They can never preempt things like efficient use of public funding and whatnot. And so, or efficient provision of public services. And so you end up focusing a lot on those things. And then I end up also finding common ground with people where I can. And so you saw that we don't have a Republican now, but we had a Republican previously on city council.
Ed Montanari.
Yeah. And, I think there's ideas that we could overlap on, good use of public dollars, what they would call like fiscal conservatism. I would just say like good use of public funds. We found ourselves in agreement multiple times over that kind of thing. And so, you stick to your principles, and you never compromise those, but you have to get things done. And as long as you can do that without compromising yourself, it's really no big deal. It's just a needle you have to thread.
It's 28 minutes past the hour right now. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm Mitch Perry with Ray Rowe. We're talking to St. Petersburg City Council member Richie Floyd. We were talking beginning the show about the Duke Energy, looking at perhaps the city going their own way. We've got a couple of calls on that, so we want to go to our phones right now, and we do want to encourage people to call in, talk to either Councilman Floyd, or we're going to bring up some other issues a little later in the hour here, 813-239-9663. So let's go to Bill, who is calling from St. Petersburg. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning. Thank you for answering. I'm just a listener with no answers. Okay. I'm a retired school teacher, professor, USF. I have a doctorate degree. That doesn't mean anything now. However, my major professor once said you can learn a lot by simple observation. I've lived in St. Pete since the 1960s. I remember when we had our own power company off of 3rd Street or 4th Street, somewhere there. I don't know. But anyway, I was, young and dumb, and I didn't know anything better. But then we went over to Duke Energy. No, not Duke. We went to Florida Power. And then now we're with Duke Energy. And so I don't know what went in between. Go ahead. I hear you trying.
Progress, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what it was called. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Progress?
Yeah.
Progress Energy.
Well,
yeah.
Well, here goes. There's nothing like empathy. The last hurricane, I don't know what it is. We'll call it the XYZ one. But I live in Harshaw area off of 22nd Avenue. I was without power for 4.5 days. And after the third day, I was a candidate for Bellevue Mental Hospital. Okay, I'm serious. Because my food spoiled, no air conditioning. I couldn't hear Scott Elliott on 88.5 on Thursdays.
A tragedy.
You got it? You understand this? So I was going nuts, okay? I really was.
So Bill, do you support looking at getting rid of Duke?
No, I'm going to tell you right now. This is where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming from right now, I do qualify as a card-carrying democratic socialist. Okay, I like that term. I like it. But here goes. After 4.5 days, all of a sudden, out of magic, this crew showed up from South Carolina, was in my backyard, and in 2 hours, they had power on in my house. And I didn't care if they came from Russia. I didn't care.
Right.
I wanted air conditioning.
We got it.
You got it. Okay, I know you'll get this. I wanted ice from my vodka tonic. I wanted...
Okay, so, Bill, we got to move on here.
Cheers to you, Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, you want me to move on? You guys been acting for 30 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, that's the way the show works.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Bill.
You don't... Listen, you can cut me off if you want to. My thing is, these people did not assess me one dime.
Okay.
They paid for it. Duke, okay, yeah, brush them off, shut them up.
No, what else do you want to... We're getting your...
They did not
So you're a fan of Duke. You don't want to leave Duke. I just don't know where you're at.
I'm not a fan... No, stop that. I'm not a fan of Duke. I'm a fan of anybody who can keep my power on and not assess
Gotcha.
me.
Okay, gotcha, dude. All right, Bill. Thank you so much for the phone call.
Bill.
All right. So he's like a new. I don't know what to characterize of it, but like keep the lights on, which is I think is what everybody. Maybe people are worried about.
He's saying at a certain point you just make it work.
There's a concern though, right? Though that people I know this is a legitimate concern of folks who think that you're going to go get rid of Duke. They do have these contracts with other states where they can bring in folks. And we're going through the tragedy of losing our air conditioning. What we were during Helene and Milton.
I can speak to that a little bit. Yeah. So first off, Bill, I understand your frustration. It's horrible to lose power. I actually live not too far from you, so that's great. Lake Harshaw is a beautiful area of the city. What I'll say to it is that there's a thing, I can't remember the name of it, just like the Municipal Energy Network.
Right.
And they do the exact same thing. And so if one part of the country is hit with a bad storm, these municipal energy companies that are all across the country send their linemen to that area that's been hit with the storm, and they get the power on very quickly. And, we can make community decisions like Winter Park did. When Winter Park left Duke Energy, they made the decision that they wanted to underground all their lines. And so they undergrounded all their lines. They charge people 20% less in bills than Duke does. And now they have a much more resilient system that rarely loses power. And they had a fraction of what we had people lose power during the last hurricane season. And so these are all decisions that I think we can make together. And I think the biggest, most important topic about this right now is we don't have a say in how our energy grid is run. If you have a problem, then you can call Duke Energy's customer service. Good luck with that. But if you have a problem with something the way that the city does it, you can call your elected officials. You can vote them out of office. You can run against them. And I think it's really important to have like a democratic say in something so important in our community.
Okay, we've got another call. I think this is DeAndre who wants to also talk about power. DeAndre, good afternoon, or good morning, excuse me.
Good morning, Rich, Mr. Ray, Mr. Floyd. Thank y'all. I've been really personally critical of energy and power because it doesn't seem like they've really stepped out into new sources for energy, or like maybe old ones that might be more prudent given our geography,
right,
et cetera. When it comes to FPL Tico, I see them with their solar. I see things, but it doesn't feel like a fair marketplace, so to say, because whether it's made up or whether it's legit, I've been hearing a lot about different means for powering homes, infrastructure, and automobiles, and not just the electric car thoughts on transportation. There's different ways to get around and et cetera. I was curious, what do you see in contrast, like as far as for opportunity, what do you see in contrast with the power companies that, would be possible outside of just, hey, what they've been delivering for so long, when it seems like there's a bigger market that communities deserve being exposed to. Like, how big is it? Like, what's out there? What can you tell us about, what's legit out there in other power energy sources?
Well, yeah, DeAndre, and before I let Rich go, I know I write a lot about energy actually in the state, and we are seeing a lot more solar than we ever have before, and a lot of that's had to do because the price has dropped. So that is a good thing for the Sunshine State. And it is dependent on our big utilities, TECO, Duke, FP&L. And FP&L is actually doing a lot, to be fair to them. They're not in our area here in the Tampa Bay area.
Northern Florida.
Yeah, but they have like 6 million accounts, 12 million people. They are the biggest power company in Florida. Investor-owned utilities, though, and there's a lot of pros and cons with that. But what's your thoughts about this, Richie?
Yeah, I mean, even if we were to take control of our energy grid, we would still have to buy energy because we wouldn't do energy generation. But we can use our market power then to influence what energy we want to be created in the state. I can't speak to exactly how much energy providers are creating renewable energy right now, but I know that we could put a lot more pressure on them to do more if we're using our buying power as one cohesive block to do so. And I think that's sort of an undercurrent of all of this. St. Pete has a commitment to getting to renewable energy by 2035.
Now, is that what, 50%? It's not 100%, is it?
No, yeah, it's 100% for the whole city.
That's pretty ambitious.
It's a very bold, ambitious plan. It was made before my time there even. And, because we have no control over our energy grid, we have not been able to make any headway towards that.
That's a good point, right. So let's talk about that for a minute, because I think there's like 10 or 11, 12. Okay,
thank you, DeAndre.
Yeah. But there's about, I think not only about a dozen, because Tallahassee hasn't done much, of course, on climate change, but the cities have. Places, a lot of it in Pinellas County, by the way, not just St. Pete. I believe Largo has, a few other in Pinellas County have set these goals of trying to get a renewable energy portfolio of a certain percent, and you're saying it's 100% by 2035, which is super ambitious.
It's like next week.
Yeah, I mean, we're 2025 right now, but nevertheless, right. And so people have gone, and I know I believe, you guys had a meeting about this where you're like, okay, where are we at on these goals? And it's like, because the city itself doesn't really have any control over it. It's your energy provider, which is Duke. Maybe not so doing so well in that pace.
No, we're not doing great. I mean, we have a memorandum of understanding with Duke on this, and it's just not going very quickly at all, is what I would say. Like, there's been some changes, some progress, but it's just not going very quickly at all. And so I think, an underlying idea of all of this, I talk about community control. I talk about, our public goods being controlled by the public. But an undercurrent of all of this is we're a city that's vulnerable to climate change. And if we can stop impacting it as best as we can by not using fossil fuels, that's what we should do. And we've committed to it as a city, and we've been unable to move in that direction. And so that's definitely a part of the conversation as well.
Again, if you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to Skinny here on WMNF 88.5, 11:38 in the morning. Mitch Perry with Ray Rowe. We're talking to St. Petersburg City Council member Richie Floyd. And now, Ray, let's now talk about this part. And by the way, again, you can call in 813-239-9663. Richie, you said it a couple times during this interview. You are a proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA. This political affiliation has become much more noted in the last 6 months or so because of the emergence of Zoran Mandami in New York City. The 33-year-old assemblyman is now favored to be the next mayor of New York City, according to public opinion polls. And there's a lot of concern in New York City who freak out with this when they hear that there's a socialist, a Democratic socialist, who may be the next mayor of New York. Explain to our listeners how you define yourself as a Democratic socialist, what that means, actually.
I think... broad question. I can talk about what it means to be a Democratic Socialist municipal elected official.
I think you said you were a DSA centrist. I think you said that.
I mean, that's the organization itself has like left and right wings inside of it, like people who are, more boisterous, more left-wing on one side, people who are more focused on elections on one side, on the right side, and I find myself like in the middle of it, but just very just standard democratic socialism popularized by Bernie Sanders, AOC. That was what got me inspired to do politics. I really did not feel like politics were a place that I could have an impact on the world until Bernie Sanders got on stage and said everyone should have health care, be able to get a good education, and we should end the forever wars. Those were the big topics then, and that literally woke something up in me that said we can have a good form of politics in this country, and got me interested. And so that plays out at a municipal level, like things like Duke Energy, in providing high quality, good public services that are controlled by the public. There are certain things that you need to live in your life. Water, sewer, an education, food, clothing, power, internet nowadays. These things are utilities. They're very important. Housing. And for them to be controlled by people just looking to make a profit off of you is seriously problematic. It's the reason why we can't have nice things in a lot of cases. And so that's where I focus my energy on at a municipal level. There's all sorts of principles as well, solidarity with the international community and working people across the world. That's important to me. And making sure we build an economy that's democratic and fair to everyone. And so those are the things that I focus on. And that often just means like trying to provide really good city services and expand what those city services are. And that's why I focus on things like speed bumps and public arts and our energy grid.
It's so funny, when DSA gets demonized and they paint these people out to be radical, and this is the radio, but, Richie's sitting here, I know him as a teacher, somebody who likes to fish. He's sitting here, just looks like a normal guy with pretty regular ideas when he says that. I think you're 33 too, right?
I just turned 34, actually,
okay,
a couple months ago.
Mamdani's 33. What's it been like to see somebody that young kind of dominate the conversation in such a huge way?
I can only imagine the stresses and pressure he's feeling, like, for such a high profile role. I mean, it can be stressful just being like a city legislator in a city a fraction of the size of New York. So I'm sure he's going through a lot of personal strife right now. But I also think that, if he's, anything like me, you have a personal commitment to do this kind of work. Like there's a lot of different things that we could be doing with our lives early in our professional careers like this. And so I'm sure it's encouraging, not just to him, but to the entire movement in New York. And it's encouraging to us here as well. Really, because we can see that, like, if you focus on the things that are important to people, like making their lives easier, making them more affordable, that everybody can respond. There's been polling in New York that shows him winning like 25% of conservative voters in New York. And my experience here has been, if somebody has conservative values, I can go talk to them about why it's more efficient for us to spend our money on good public goods and services, and they'll often agree. So it's really been a nice thing to see.
Part of the demonization, if you will, of DSA and in terms of the Mamdani race is like some of the things on the platform, right? I mean, the party does say on the national platform, eliminating all misdemeanor offenses, closing local jails. That's just a couple of things I found here. So do you believe in those things? Actually, I can ask you that.
I mean, yeah, you can go straight to the point. Yeah. So I think the platform was written in 4 or 5 years ago. It's since we've had our program updated since then. We have one called Workers Deserve More. It's more like a minimum program with exactly what we're trying to accomplish. That platform's aspirational and shows our values. But as far as day-to-day governance, like I focus on a lot of other things instead. I have no control over a lot of those things. Yeah. But ultimately, what I would like to see is a criminal justice system that's more fair and more reasonable and more equitable. And I think that's what that speaks to.
Well, let's talk about the St. Pete Police Department. How do you think that functions? Back in 2020, when I first met you and you were an activist during the George Floyd protests, Mayor Rick Kreisman, I remember interviewing him for Bay News 9, where he talked about, not defunding the police, but, quote, reimagining the police. Mm-hmm. And that's what led to, what's the name of the
call program?
Yeah, the call program, mm-hmm. Which is still very robust.
Yeah,
right?
It's very popular, actually.
It's better than Tampa's.
Tell the listeners what the call program is.
So it's called the Community Assistance and Life Liaison Program. And my relationship with the police department and the police union has been cordial in that I really am pleased that they understand that there are things that just are not their role to do. And so the call program is a great example of that. It provides services for people who are experiencing mental health problems, low-level calls, nonviolent calls. If you call the St. Petersburg Police Department or 911 and you call them, this is one example they always give. Kids who are truant, won't go to school, people will call the police on them. The police don't need to show up to someone's home or the mall if a kid's just unwilling to go to school, but they'll send someone who, now they're calling them coach, but they're navigators. who can come and talk to them and tell them like, hey, you know, this is why you should go to school. Or if they're having a mental health crisis, the police are not the people to help someone during a mental health crisis. And we've seen that time and again. And so the police department and the police union in St. Pete have recognized that. They've recognized that not everything should be on their shoulders, because I think that's what society's done, is put a lot of things like any, you know, antisocial behavior, just throw it on the police's pile. We're starting to recognize that that's not true, and that a holistic approach to public safety involves things like mental health care, stable housing, opportunities for youth. And that's the idea that we've been pushing towards, and I've been happy to see that St. Pete's been a leader in that.
I've heard that Mondami has talked about something like that, and he's got a lot of pushback. Again, I think, you know, people could talk about what's happened here in St. Pete as an example of why that isn't a crazy idea at all, to let the police focus on, you know, crime issues. I guess some would say like their smaller issues are important. I don't know. They have it's a higher profile. I don't know if they have more crime per se. You hear a lot more about New York City because it's New York City. The media is there focusing on a lot of, you know, things that are happening. Some are bad, but I'm just so fascinated by the fact that some of the things that he's talking about, maybe you have talked about, you know, in your campaign. But again, the high profileness of what's going on with him, and again, I see a little some fear there, and maybe it's alleviating now as he gets to work, you know, talk to business officials and the like here. Because again, the fact is, there's only a couple other elections going on this fall. There's a gubernatorial elections in Virginia and in New Jersey. So this is like the high-profile election for those of us who follow this.
Biggest city in America, the site of most capital accumulation for the country. Like, it's going to be high-profile. But the thing to know about that race and Zoran becoming mayor is there's been other DSA members who were mayor of New York City in the not-too-distant past. I believe one guy's name was Dinkins. And then look,
wait, David Dinkins.
He was a DSA member.
No, I don't know about that.
Yes, you can look it up. I promise you.
Right.
Now, he wasn't as open with his socialism as we are now.
Yeah. He was a DSA member.
Yeah.
This is confirmed.
It's interesting. Okay,
yes.
interesting.
And then LaGuardia was. I don't know if he called himself a socialist or was called a socialist afterwards, but it's not an unprecedented thing. You know, we said I was the first socialist elected in Florida in 100 years. Well, the city of Gulfport used to be controlled by the Socialist Party, and the state representative from Pinellas County was a member of the Socialist Party. These are not unprecedented things.
Real quick to stay on the call program, and please, you know, when anybody talks to a lot of cops, they say a lot of the same things. Like, they don't necessarily want to be the ones to respond to certain calls. But what's the difference in St. Pete politically in creating that political will and understanding for people to just get past the basic thing and fund a program like Call, where in other cities you can't even get to that point where they start talking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're lucky. I don't know. I don't know how to say that. Actually, I take it back. There was a lot of organizing that went into that. And we talked about what we were up to during George Floyd. There was protests in St. Pete constantly. But one thing we did in St. Pete was, you know, a lot of the activist community put out like a list of things that they wanted to see happen. And, you know, there were some things in there that were more realistic than others, but it was very easy to point to an example. St. Pete's not the first city to do this. There was an example in Eugene, Oregon. I'm forgetting the name. It's something like Woots or MEPS or something like that, where they did this actually. And we were able to point to that and say,
there was
hey,
models there already.
Look, this is the kind of thing we would like to see happen. And, you know, through, you know, activism and reasonable lobbying and education really for the whole community, we came to a point where we were able to all agree on moving in that direction.
I do want to go back to the phones because we've got a couple of people who've been holding for a bit. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, 11:49 in the AM, you're listening to The Skinny here. St. Petersburg City Council member Richie Floyd has been our guest here. And let's go to Simon. Simon from Lakeland. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Just talking about the electric bills. I live in Lakeland. As an example, I would recommend the people in Tampa stay with me. My last month's electric bill was $930. As far as the social...
Do you live in an airplane hangar, Simon?
Well, it's comfortable. And as far as health care, over the last 3 years, I would have paid $40,000 in health care benefits for one person. So it's always easy to choose picking socialists. It's hard running against Santa Claus. But interesting that this person would talk about democratic socialists. And there's other callers, but what the people should really look at is the distinction between social democracy and democratic socialists, because the socialism actually branches into either fascism or communism. You guys take care.
Thanks. Do you want to speak to that, Richie?
I mean, I respect that people could have different opinions, is what I would say. But, you know, I there was a lot there. I think healthcare was one of them.
Yeah, and you're showing that reference.
Yeah, but, you know, it's just there's statistics that show Lakeland charges 40% less per kilowatt hour with their public energy utility than Duke Energy does. You know, United States has 68,000 deaths a year from lack of health insurance. And so other countries have zero. We pay the most per capita for our health care compared to other countries. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I recognize that people have differences of opinion.
Before we let you go here, let's talk about, I'm glad we haven't talked about it for 50 minutes here, but it is an issue in St. Petersburg still, and that is the issue of the Tampa Bay Rays, right?
We did pretty good avoiding it. For the
yeah, but it's
surprised.
like, it's still, you know, the thing is you guys are paying for the roof. I guess, is that all done now in terms of the obligation the city has done to pay for that?
So our obligation has not been met because our obligation is to provide an MLB quality stadium to them. And since it's not, the construction's not complete, no. So they have to continue the construction. I can't remember when or if we're going to have another vote on it. We've voted to fund it. I was against it initially. I wanted to see us publicly negotiate a settlement.
Was it $55 million? Is that what it is?
The total cost, I think, is estimated around $55 million. We'll see what it finally lands on. Yeah, I wanted to see us publicly negotiate a settlement. Maybe the settlement would have been an absurd amount of money and we would have had to have fixed it. Maybe it wouldn't have, and it would have made more sense for us financially. We didn't get to have that conversation, so I couldn't support us initially. Once we voted to put the stadium roof back on, we were, I think the expression is, our feet were tied to the pedals. Like, we were going downhill. There was nothing we could do. We have to provide them a stadium, and we have no leverage to negotiate out of it once we voted to put the roof back on. So right now, everything is going pretty well, I would say. Like, we're on schedule still, and relatively on budget. I think we've had a couple of costs that have gone over, but nothing insane yet. I've been saying, wow, it sure is nice to see this project run by the local municipality have a reasonable budget, and, well, a reasonable budget in comparison to a lot of other things. It's way too much money to put a roof back on a stadium that's only 3 years. That's only going to exist for 3 more years. But it's on a schedule as well. I'm expecting all of our public projects to be on schedule and on budget as well from now on, not just the ones that provide a resource to a team owned by a billionaire.
Yeah, that whole thing fell apart. We haven't had you on air since then. And I know in politics, we're always looking forward and trying to improve people's lives. But how vindicated do you feel from the fallout of that? Or what is your emotions there?
I mean,
you were really against the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should subsidize that kind of thing. I mean, it's a private corporation owned by a very wealthy person, and you know, it loses out on, and it was going to cost the city money over the long term. But I don't. It's the thing. I'm vindicated is not a word I would ever use. Yeah. Like, it was a frustrating situation from start to end. It was frustrating to see it end that way. We spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort having the discussion around that. And yeah, I was against it. But in the end, to have all of that wasted was very frustrating as well. Now, I do see a positive to it, and I see that, like, the money that we were going to expend on the stadium, which was, you know, by my calculations, going to be $250 million in the red after 30 years. We will still be able to recoup a lot of that funds by redeveloping the area and, you know, generating the revenue that it'll generate for the city from there, and then using those funds on social goods and public provisions of services. And so I'm still excited about the future of the city.
Another important issue I want to get to is the city of St. Petersburg has responded to a public sleeping lawsuit filed by a downtown restaurant owner by asking a judge to dismiss it due to vague assertions. This is going back a couple of months ago. This person is accusing the city of failing to enforce a new state law, which we know the state passed last year against basically sleeping or camping in a public right of way. And so let's see. This lawsuit says the complaint says the city's failed to enforce a statute, particularly in Williams Park and the surrounding sidewalks near this person's restaurants, constitutes a blatant disregard for state law and undermines the safety, economic vitality, and aesthetic integrity of the community. Richie, I know there's been talk when we had Brandy Gabbard on here. That's when it first happened about people about doing something. Well, doing something the city doing something proactive when it comes to homelessness around Williams Park and downtown? Where are you at on this at all?
So we actually just had a committee meeting about it yesterday, and I was thinking about it on the drive over here. And, the proposal was something like $1.4 million a year to focus on like a downtown.
This is the Clean and Safe program that they're talking about now.
Yeah, which, they've changed the name because a lot of people felt that was a euphemism. And
what do they call it now?
You can name, it's Downtown Improvement District is what we're thinking about. And so for me, before we were to move into that direction, I need to see that we're actually going to provide more social services, do a better job on housing, because ultimately the idea that someone doesn't have a roof over their head is a direct result of the current housing market and the social services that we provide. And so right now we have a social service action fund, and we're putting $700,000 a year into it. The idea of putting $1.4 million a year into just improving downtown without improving our social services, I think that might be a little backwards. It's something that I've been thinking lately. So I think we can do a better job, because I believe we can always do a better job on all of these issues. But we really have to start attacking the root of the problem, because I know a lot of people are worried that we're going to just push people who are experiencing homelessness into other neighborhoods, just try to sanitize the image of downtown. And the truth is, though, and I believe this strongly, our downtown is thriving, is in a good position, and doesn't have any problems that any other city doesn't have. And I think we do a lot better job than a lot of other cities. And so I'm not willing to say there's not a problem at all there. We're a normal city. We have our own problems, but I believe that we're in a good position and we can continue to get better, and that's where I'm at on that.
It's not the first time that St. Pete has tried stuff like this, curb-to-curb security, parks, the benches being removed, downtown beautification in the 90s, the 80s, urban renewal. So things like this have always happened in municipalities. I'm curious, Sean Drinkard, who was with the Tampa Downtown Partnership, he was VP there for 15 years, just moved over and is now the VP of the St. Petersburg Downtown Partnership. I know that the Tampa Downtown Partnership has a great kind of homeless liaison program. Have you been able to interface yet or hear much from Sean about his approach to that?
Yeah, just starting now. Okay. So I can't say for sure. I'll have to learn more about how that works. But I think ultimately what I would like to see, if we're going to do anything, is something that's empathetic, that's not just hassling people, that's actually connecting people to services. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. And if we can make sure that that's what we're doing, and we're doing it in an equitable way towards downtown and the rest of our neighborhoods, it'll be something we can all come to terms with and all agree on. And I think it's just going to take some work to get in that direction.
We just have a couple of minutes left, but we do have one caller that's been waiting, so we're going to put him on here. Chris, you're on the air. You got about
Thanks for waiting, Chris.
Yeah. Hello, Chris.
Chris?
Oh, yes, pardon me, I'm here. Are you there, Mitch?
Yeah, we've just got about 30 seconds, Chris.
Right, rather than ending, of course, the jails and the judicial system is very corrupt, how about just ending victimless crimes where their revenue-raising strategies obvious, and the state acts as your nanny, as your guardian, because they sue on behalf of you when they press criminal charges. So I think that people should be able to decide whether that happens on their own, as their own competent individuals. And there's so many other judicial reforms we could get into, but there are criminals out there that we need to be protected from. And that is the government's job beyond the definition.
It is public safety. Absolutely. Chris, thank you for the call. So we've been talking about that. And you police relations downtown, you like you said, you think that it's doing a good job.
Yeah. And, to Chris's point, I'm not sure I completely followed, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of there are people who act in bad faith all over the country, all over the world. We're never going to solve all of societal's ills, but we can build a world that's more fair, that disincentivizes that kind of behavior up front, proactively instead of reactively, like with the police and whatnot. And that's what we look to do. And I think there's a lot of crime that we don't talk about. There's things like wage theft from employers. It's the largest form of theft. There's all these scams that are going on now in the world, and these things just haven't been given the time of day. There's corporate crime as well, white-collar crime that doesn't go as enforced as it should be, and those are the kinds of things that I look to focus on as well.
St. Petersburg City Councilman Richie Floyd, representing District 8. Thank you so much for driving over to Tampa and joining us here at WMNF Tampa today.
Thank you so much for having me. The traffic was fine, fortunately.
Oh, look, see, he says it's fine, guys. It's fine. That new bridge works just fine. On behalf of myself, Ray Roa, my co-host, Mitch Perry, we have Skip Sassy on the boards today, Anthony Medor on the phones. Please keep listening to WMNF Tampa. Joellen Schilke is in Studio One. She's the hostess who loves you the mostest, and she has art in your ear ready to transition you. And oh no, I can't say what she's signaling through the roof right now. But thank you so much for being a part of this community. We look forward to seeing you at the 45th birthday bash happening at Bayboro. So hopefully you come out there. St. Pete has all the great concert venues in a lot of ways. Yeah, that's it for us. We'll see you guys next week. And thanks again, Richie.
Thank you.